Today we're fortunate to have a wonderful guest with us, Tim Snow from the George Snow Foundation. And Tim's going to tell us a story about his family and George Snow and how a small group of friends and family turned a deep personal tragedy into a lasting blessing for many deserving young people in Boca Raton and Palm Beach County. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
So welcome to Duffel on Digital. We're going to do a little deviation from our usual today. You know, we do videos on probate and trust law and estate planning, but we also do videos that are important to members of the community and to our clients. And we highlight some deserving charitable foundations in these videos. Today we're going to talk about the George Snow Foundation. And Tim's going to give us a little background on how George Snow Foundation started and what exactly their mission is. And for those who are interested, we'll talk a little bit about how people can help.
Great.
So, Tim, why don't you give us a little background on exactly how the George Snow Foundation started from the beginning?
Absolutely. So my father moved our family down to Boca Raton in 1958 to take a position as a high school math teacher at which was then Seacrest High School, which is now Atlantic High School in Delray. He later moved into the fields of real estate and construction, did quite well, retired at an early age. Our family's always been into aviation, and that's how he lost his life, unfortunately, was in a helicopter accident coming back from a charter in the Bahamas. Unfortunately, we never recovered his remains or the wreckage of the helicopter, so his disappearance remains still a mystery to all of us. But we wanted to memorialize my dad, and after his passing, and while he was alive, he was always trying to help young people that were trying to help themselves. So we thought a scholarship fund would be a great way to memorialize him, and so we created this. We received our IRS designation, letter of designation 2 years after his passing in 1980. So we gave our first scholarships in 1982. And since then, we've helped over 2,000 young people in Palm Beach and northern Broward counties. And we've given out over $12 million. And this year alone, we granted $1.44 million in scholarships and support services.
Wow. You know, in the interest of full disclosure, I have to say that it's my pleasure, really, and privilege and honor to serve on the Board of Trustees for the George Snow Scholarship Fund. And I also chair the Professional Advisory Council for George Snow, which we'll talk about that a little bit in a second. So, you know, I think having the opportunity to be involved a little bit with George Snow and knowing a lot of people in the community, my family's been here since the early 70s as well. You know, one of the things that always strikes me is how, number one, how the family turned this tragedy into something that resulted in really a blessing for a lot of young people. And also, you and I have talked before about how the community just kind of came around the Snow family and continues 37 years later.
Right.
And, you know, anybody that goes to any of the Snow Scholarship functions knows that, you know, there's really, it's like a huge family, you know. All the former alumni that, you know, return and help, and some even who have contributed their own scholarship funds, and members of the community who want to do something positive for young people. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, you know, sort of the early days, you know, like it didn't just start and it didn't just happen to where it is today, which is pretty impressive. The first few years, I mean, how did it evolve? What kind of things what challenges did you all face?
Well, we faced the same challenges that any startup nonprofit has. I think they're in the beginning, and actually even to this day, there's a perception that my father had left all this money to a foundation, a private foundation, and all we do is write checks out of that. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. So we're a private charity. Every penny that we've ever given away over the years has been raised from the community. And I think that's one of the things that I'm most proud of, is that it really is a community of people that come around an organization and help us help these deserving young people. If you look at our roster of volunteers and supporters, there are literally hundreds of people that come together every year to make this possible. And truly, we can't do it without all of those people contributing in their own way, with their own expertise, with their financial resources, attending our events, baking cookies for our kids.
Doing the interviews?
Doing the interviews, reading the applications.
Yeah.
There's just so much that goes into it. And, you do this day to day and you don't really realize it until you take a look at, one of your publications that lists all the volunteers, all the people that contribute. And it's just incredible, the number and the scope of the folks that help us do what we do every year.
Yeah, it really is amazing. And it started out literally just your family and then a couple of very close family friends, right?
Right.
And somehow the discussion focused on how we're going to do something positive out of this terrible loss. And it just started sort of like day by day, right? I mean, this was not, you currently devote all your time to running the George Snow Foundation and building it and done an amazing job. But in the beginning, this was just something that you and your brothers and sisters, you all helped, right?
Right. It started, like you say, with my family, my brothers and sisters, and a very small group of my father's friends. And we kept seeing, that first year, I think we awarded $6,000 in scholarships.
It's kind of funny now, right? I mean,
well, yeah, but we were very proud of that.
Oh, sure,
then,
yeah, absolutely.
And actually, the young lady that we helped that first year now sits on our board.
Right.
But yeah, that's like you say. We did it sort of passively for a little while, for a bit of time, and we kept seeing all these young people that we wanted to help, but we didn't have the funding to do so.
Right.
So it was then a function of, well, we need to have a fundraiser, and we need to figure out more ways to raise money, and that's when I got more heavily involved with it, and have been really focusing all of my attention on the organization for quite a while now.
Yeah, and I don't want to jump ahead. We're going to talk about it in a minute, but the George Snow Scholarship Fund has been recognized nationally, and we'll talk about this. But some of the events that you go to, where some of the biggest educational charity organizations in the country are there, and just a couple of years ago, George Snow received a great recognition from that. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. But so. It's evolved in this way, and it started out, with the idea that, and one of the things I noticed that you always mention when you're talking about the scholarships is deserving young people. It's one of the things that personally, as somebody that's involved, as part of the greater family, I guess, the George Snow Foundation. But I think a lot of us feel when we go to some of the events and we see these young people, it really touches us to see that many of these young people are dealing with very difficult personal circumstances, and yet they rise above those circumstances, and they really need help. And the George Snow Scholarship Fund helps them, and not just in financial ways, which is obviously critically important, because sometimes the price of admission, literally and figuratively, to the university is dollars. But George Snow does a lot more than just provide dollars to these scholars. So why don't you talk a little bit about some of the, what I refer to as sort of the value-added services that Snow does for the scholars?
Yeah, that's the one thing that really sets us apart from almost any other scholarship provider, certainly locally, or what we call our scholar support services. So, and sometimes we feel like those support services are even more valuable than the financial award that we're given to the students. So we have a whole array of services, over a dozen different things, and they've all really been created to satisfy the needs that we're seeing from our students. And what we say is we treat our kids like they're our own sons and daughters. So if you think about, well, would you send your student, your son or daughter away to college with a computer? Well, of course you would. So we get computers for our students. We get them their college physicals. We send them care packages. We have an emergency fund for them so that if they have some unexpected need that arises, then we're able to fund that for them. So again, it all gets back to that one simple thing. Would you do that for your own son or daughter? And if you would, then we want to help our kids that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have to keep in mind and this is something that is a little bit of a challenge for you and for the organization and for the people that support and love the George Snow Scholarship Fund and want to help. And the perception is that in Boca Raton, everybody's wealthy. And certainly we have an incredible percentage of our population that's very affluent, undoubtedly, but I remember one of the first times that my eyes were opened up to this situation was when I was with the Rotary Club, and we used to do our scholarships at the Boca Raton Rotary Club through the George Snow Scholarship Fund. And the reason we did that was because not only were the monies managed well, which I think the stewardship of the donations is something that's very important for any potential donor.
Sure.
Everybody wants to know that whatever they're giving is actually being used wisely and carefully and properly, but also the fact that these young people need help. They're not just affluent people that want to have a little extra money or make life easier in college. And one young woman that we helped years ago through Snow, through the Rotary Club, I remember her telling me a story, and she lost both her parents in high school to some kind of a drug deal gone wrong, and yet she still maintained a very high grade point average. I remember her telling me that her aunt helped her, and she moved in with the aunt, and the aunt helped her buy a car. And when I asked her about the car, she said she was working a job, going to school, no parents to support her, in order to pay for this beater of a car that at least got her back and forth to school and some of the functions. And she was coming to Snow and just saying, I need a little bit of help.
Right. Well, that's true. And these young people really have overcome circumstances that would make most of us literally throw our hands up and surrender. But they have not done that. And we offer that support structure that they don't have at home. And they know that they can call our office at any point with any kind of problems that they might have, and we'll figure out how to help them. And we impress upon them that they are a part of our family, and we treat them as our family. And there's some amazing stories that we could tell about, like you say, these young people that have, I think, thrown themselves into their schoolwork, maybe even because of their situation at home. Right. It's better for them to be at school and to focus on their schoolwork than to dwell on their circumstances. But they're amazing young people. I call them rock stars, and they are truly amazing and very deserving of the help that we give them.
Right. And part of the way in which Snow determines who is going to receive a scholarship, and this is one of the beautiful things that I like about the Snow Scholarship Foundation, is that it utilizes the community as a real part of the process from start to finish. Certainly, there's no way that the Snow Scholarships could perform the way they do without you and some of the staff that is there on a day-to-day basis, and we'll talk a little bit about that because that's critically important. We got to mention Debbie Filer and
right.
All that she does for all the scholars, but over many years, and she does an amazing job. But my point is that and we talked about this a second ago, we referenced it, is that the interview process, it's really an amazing thing. Why don't you talk a little bit about the interview process, how many hours it takes, and how many people are involved, and how that's sort of evolved too?
Sure. So the whole selection process starts in October, really, where we go out into every high school in the Palm Beach County and Northern Broward County and do workshops about our applications and answer any questions that the students might have. So then the students apply. They all apply online. We'll get somewhere above 1,000 applications for all of
Wow.
our scholarships.
Excuse me, is that all just in Palm Beach County, or do you go beyond Palm Beach County?
We serve Palm Beach County and 3 schools in northern Broward County.
Okay.
Blanche Ely, Pompano Beach, and Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School.
Okay.
And so our deadline for our applications is February 1st. So we go through and do a preliminary need analysis on all of our applications, and then we turn it over to our selection committee. And we have about 70 people that sit on that selection committee.
Wow.
Every application is reviewed at least 5 times. And then we have a formula where we kick out the low score. And then from there, we determine who we're going to interview. And we'll interview in excess of 250 students in any given selection process
Wow.
cycle.
And that takes several hours of each of those volunteers' time, right? I mean, that's not a small commitment. It's not a couple hours here and there.
No, our selection committee, our readers, will put in about 40 hours worth of work
Wow.
in a period of about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And then our interviewers will spend several days and nights interviewing these young people.
Right. And these are people that are all members of the community.
Yeah.
Some of them, many of them, very successful, people, professionals, and other individuals that are working, that have their own families, but they come forward every year and they do this stuff. It's amazing.
It is amazing, and what's really has always amazed me is, if you get a group of 70 people, somebody's going to have some circumstance where they're not going to be able to complete the work that we give them, and invariably every year they all get it done for us on time, and they're incredibly committed to the process. And what's great about it is many of them have, most of them I should say, have years and years of experience doing this with us.
Right.
So they understand the process, they know what to look for in these applications.
And it's a critical role. I mean, it's one of the things I love about this charity is that to me, each aspect of how the charity functions, how it determines, first of all, how it reaches out into the community to let young people know that there's help available through this process, and then secondly, how it takes the time and effort, and through the experience and knowledge of the staff members and these community volunteers, they very carefully and sort of judiciously review the applications so that we have limited resources, and we're going to help as many people as we can, and we want to make sure that we help the people that really need it. And without all these different steps along the way, we couldn't do that properly, right?
Well, no doubt, and it's so important to have a fair and unbiased process, and we're able to do that with all these great people that give of themselves, and we truly can't do it without them. Again,
Yeah.
getting back to that, that same topic.
Yeah, to me, what I see is I see this, the loss of your dad, and how it started initially with your family and sort of a very tight group around the family that came together at that difficult time. And then over time, the community came around that, family. So it's really an amazing thing. Tim, we talked a lot about deserving young people. I think one of the best ways to really express this in a way that people can really understand it and take it in is to illustrate it with, a story or two. Is there one or two scholars that you can think of that the Snow Scholarship Fund helped that you could share with our viewers?
Well, sure. There's countless stories. Probably the most recent one that comes to my mind is a young man who grew up in a very tough neighborhood up in Central County, and but really was driven, to succeed. We helped him with a scholarship to go to Florida State, and since he's been in school, he's had to take guardianship of his 9-year-old cousin.
Wow.
So the 9-year-old cousin is now living with him up in Tallahassee, and so I think it's this example is a great example of how we go above and beyond to help them. So now that the young man is there living with him, where he has the extra burden of food, school supplies for the young man. So we've helped him with that. We're sending him Publix gift cards so that he can, keep the house full of food for both of them, really.
Right.
And we're getting school supplies for the young man. And again, our scholar is just an example of a young person who's not going to let their circumstances get in the way. So he's very involved in the school. He's president of a couple of clubs up there. And
amazing.
All this while he's, has to be home helping his cousin with his homework and making sure he gets to school. And so when you see that kind of commitment from the students, you want to do everything you can do to help them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's what we're there for, and that's what really sets us apart.
Right. I mean, this is an example of circumstances that would basically put many people to their knee, and yet the courage that some of these people demonstrate, and they really need and look to the George Snow Scholarship Fund to help them with what they need. No one can replace what that young man is doing for his cousin. He has to be there to do that.
Right.
But somebody needs to help him with just a little bit of extra money, a little bit of extra support. It reminds me also of what I've heard you say several times at the scholarship awards, which, we want to touch a little bit on all the different events that the George Snow Scholarship Fund does, because, some of these events are some of my favorite events that I go to through the course of the year. They really are. We're going to talk a little bit about the ballroom battle, which my wife Roseanne loves to go to that. It's a wonderful event, great event for the community, raises a lot of money for the scholars. It's really important to the scholarship fund. We have the Cowboy Ball, we have the golf tournament, but we also have the awards ceremony, which is, again, everything is really a community event, and the community does come together. I don't know how many people we have at those things, but there's a few hundred people that come to those, plus all the scholars and all the staff. But there's one thing that you often mention when you're talking to the scholars and you're addressing them directly. It has to do with the fact that their family, and also, the sort of pay it forward kind of concept. Why don't you just mention that because this is a perfect example where a scholar took the help from the Snow Scholarship Fund and then really is paying it forward by helping his cousin. So.
Yeah, well, that is what we tell them is that they're part of our family. And when we have our event, the annual awards reception, the students get to see all the people in the community that are coming together to help them. And it's interesting that what I try to communicate to the students is that, look, you're now part of our family, and you've just met your new extended family. And there's so many people that you haven't even met yet, and they've all come together to help you, someone that they don't even know. And so I've often have the kids, come up and say, well, how could I ever repay you? Well, the way you can repay us is by emulating this family that you are now a part of, to be a giver, to help other people. And if they can live that sort of life, then they will have definitely repaid our organization for any help that we've given to them.
Yeah, and the other thing that I'd mentioned, especially that you sort of you can see and really feel and experience when you go to those awards receptions, is that there are many people in this community that have been doing this year after year after year. And even in some cases, in the last year, there were a couple that you mentioned to the audience that was there, where people had their own difficult situation, personal situation, like with the loss of a young child or a young adult in their family. And they took the example of the Snow family, and they're supporting someone through the Snow Scholarship Fund. So that's just it's a tremendous thing. It's a tremendous thing to be a part of. It really is. So why don't you touch base a little bit on some of the events, because those are things that people could sort of get to know a little bit about snow.
Sure.
And also want to say that we'll put in the comments below your contact information, and if anybody is interested in getting more information or helping, or just wants to learn more about the Snow Scholarship Fund, or wants to get a copy of the tax returns or whatever they need, they can contact you directly, or Debbie Filer, or someone at your office, or Joni Jones, or they feel free to contact the Duffy Law Firm. I'm happy to pass on any information so that we can connect people, because it's a tremendous organization. It's a tremendous charity, but it needs donations in order to keep doing what it's doing. So, it's very important. So talk a little bit about some of the great functions that we have at the George Snow Scholarship Fund.
Well, we'll try to do it chronologically. So in the beginning of the year, we'll have the Cowboy Ball, typically. We're in our 26th year for that event.
Wow.
It's a very popular event for us. It's a casual event, and people seem to really enjoy it. So it's obviously a Western theme, so it's, like I said, very casual, but sort of a who's who of Boca Raton shows up to that. And
that's usually, you recently moved it to Meisner. Right?
We did, and we're right now we're going to have it at the Boca Resort this year.
Oh, fantastic!
So we're upgrading it a little bit.
That's great.
Yeah.
So go ahead and tell us about the awards reception.
Yeah, so then we do our awards reception. That typically takes place in late May or early June, and that's just a feel-good event. That's where we all come together, all of our supporters, our donors, our volunteers come together and meet these deserving young people that we're helping each year. There's sponsorships available for that.
It's beautiful. I mean, it's a catered event where we all sit down and have dinner, and we get to see all the scholars and all the people that are part of this community. It's fantastic.
And we try to tell a little story about each of the scholars, so you really get a flavor for the kind of young people that we're helping.
Yeah, and you also mentioned, as the scholars are coming up for the awards, a little bit sometimes about the donors. So I guess this would be a good point to sort of mention that there are a number of different ways that people could donate to help the George Snow Scholarship Fund. One of them would be just to provide funds and say to the Snow Scholarship Fund, use it in whatever way it's most needed, which is very helpful for you, because logistically, I think that it's something that you really need is some
Sure.
funding that you can have some flexibility on.
Mm-hmm.
There's also, especially if somebody wanted to make a substantial gift, I think it seems to tend in this direction a little bit. One could make an award of $20,000 or $50,000 and say, I want this to benefit young women who are interested in nursing, or something like that, right?
Absolutely, and we make it very easy on people. We have the infrastructure for any program, scholarship program, in place already. So essentially, people, the only thing that they really have to do are three things, and that's decide what you want to name your award, decide what kind of criteria you want to have for it. So like you said, if you want to memorialize a family member or a loved one who's passed, what was important to them, were they a nurse, were they an educator, and we can incorporate, we can find exactly the right person to meet those criteria, and then how much money they want to commit to the award. And we do that a lot. We have about 66 different programs, scholarship programs that we administrate. And again, it's a great vehicle for people that want to take a tragedy and do something really meaningful and profound with it.
Right.
We just had our most recent award is going to go to a student on the autism spectrum. So there was a young lady who was killed in a traffic accident, and so her family has come together to memorialize her with a scholarship. She was autistic, and so they want to help a student continue their education that had the same characteristics as she did.
Right. It's amazing. So let's get back on track on some of the the events that we do. So we talked a little bit about the Cowboy Ball. We talked about the awards ceremony. What's the next one?
So the next one would be our biggest event, which is what we call Boca's Ballroom Battle. That's a very, very fun event that we have every year at the Boca Resort and Club. We get 8 recognizable people in the community. We partner with Fred Astaire Dance Studio in Boca Raton, and they teach these 8 individuals a dance routine. And these folks that we get are very courageous to be able to go out there and do their dance routine. People talk about public speaking is America's greatest fear. Well, they didn't. I don't think on that list was ballroom dancing.
Yeah, dancing's right up there.
Yeah,
and it's not a small group. How many people did we have last year?
Over 800 people.
It filled the hotel resort. What do they call it? The Great Ballroom.
It's the Grand
Ballroom or whatever. But I mean, it's full of supporters.
Right.
It's a lot of fun too. There's wonderful food. There's bars, and the biggest thing is you get to see members of the community dancing, and it is a tremendous challenge for these people and a great sacrifice. They put a lot of time and effort not only into learning the dance, but they're fundraisers themselves.
Right.
And the way you win the ballroom battle, what do you call it, the mirror ball
trophy,
is by raising the most funds. And,
right.
and last year it was.
Well, last year we did the best that we've ever done.
Yeah.
It's amazing that we continue to raise that bar, but we are only able to do it through the support of our dancers, and they really go out there and beat the bushes for donations for us, and it's been a wonderful program.
Yeah, it's tremendous success, and one I'd highly recommend attending. And then the last thing would be what?
Last one we do is our golf event.
Right.
So we have that over at Royal Palm. It's we really try to make that sort of a PGA style event with our signage and make our guests and golfers feel very special. Royal Palm does a great job for us.
Royal Palm's a fantastic venue for that.
Yeah, and we have great gift packages for our golfers, so that's a real great event as well. Great.
Okay, so now I just want to touch base on one sort of final thing that's near and dear to my heart is the George Snow Professional Advisory Council. We call it the Snowpack affectionately. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what exactly the Snowpack is and how it's made up and what the Snowpack does for George Snow?
Well, we're very fortunate, Brian, to have this group of professionals. We have attorneys, CPAs, trust officers that all come together for our Snowpack meetings. It's really a great resource for us and for our donors. They're there available to offer advice and counsel to anybody that has questions. And they're really experts in their field. We get the best of the best in our community to come and help us with that. Our meetings are great. They're sort of a continuing education meeting for some of them.
You've learned a lot.
Well, yeah, I don't know. It's all over my head, believe me. But I do sit and listen and nod my head occasionally, yeah.
Yeah, we just had a meeting a few weeks ago, and Amy Fanslaw from Osborne and Osborne came, and she helped us, shared with us, her knowledge and expertise. She just had 2 articles published in the Florida Bar Journal all about decanting and trusts. And we have a great group, like you said, with some wonderful estate planning attorneys, some great CPAs, investment advisors, and trust officers, insurance professionals. And the idea of this group is simply to have, number one, a resource that's available so that if somebody was interested in making some type of a legacy gift, especially to George Snow, meaning they want to leave something in their will or in their trust through their estate, there's a lot of different ways that those things can be structured, and some that can be extremely favorable to the donor and the donor's family. And those kinds of things, you need to kind of know the ins and outs of how to put those together in a way that will maximize the benefits and the efficiencies for the family. And it's a wonderful way to provide a substantial gift to Snow so that this work can be done and continued, for a long time to come. And in that vein, we've been focusing on the endowment fund for the last couple of years. Why don't you talk a little bit about the endowment fund?
Well, as I had mentioned earlier, I think a lot of people think that my dad left an endowment, but he did not. And so we've been doing this work. We're really functioning like a $25 million charity, if you will, when you factor in the amount of money that we're giving away every year. And so we embarked on a initiative about 3 or 4 years ago where we're trying to raise money for an endowment. Our current endowment is about $3 million, but we really want to get that up around the $20 million mark. We work very hard to raise the money that we give away. And as you said, we've got all these different events. And we just believe that this organization has become a community asset. And we want more than anything for that to go on as long as, well, into perpetuity, really, and continue to help these young people. It's a resource that the community relies on, and we want to make sure that it's available to our students for years to come.
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges is that the model as it initially started and as it evolved, especially in the early years and even up until fairly recently, when we started the endowment fund, is one where people make sort of annual gifts, or they make gifts where they make pledges or commitments over 4 years and things like that, which is wonderful, and that's how we've gotten where we have so far. But I think the next level that we're trying to get to is one where it can sustain itself, and that's typically an endowment fund. And hopefully what we can do there is we can raise sufficient resources into this endowment fund so that we can just use some of the income and maybe even some of the capital gains, whatever that's made in the fund over the years, and leave the core in place so that it provides an ongoing resource, especially in difficult times. I mean, we've been very fortunate, and you and all the staff at the George Snow Scholarship Fund and all the family and the community around that has worked very hard every year to meet their goals and to try to raise more money. Like we talked about the ballroom battle. Every year, everybody works hard to make sure that there's some money there, because that's how we do the important work that's being done. But what would really help is if people are out there that are watching this video, if they really want to help, making some kind of a legacy gift through their will or trust. I think our goal should be $30 million, and I think we could hit that pretty easily with a community like we have in Boca if people really understood the work that was being done and how much the community gets around this organization.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And it really is, the beautiful thing is we have this infrastructure, as you said, nationally recognized for the way that we operate and the best practices that we have. And so if somebody, wanted to help somebody continue their education and at the same time memorialize themselves, their families, a lost loved one, it's very simple to do. And with the help of our PAC, we can make sure that the donor maximizes their contribution and at the same time helps some really amazing young people.
Yeah, and really, and we'll leave on this note, the impact is not just the young people that are assisted, because each one of these people, they have people in their family, they have people in their circle, and like the example that you used earlier, helping this one young man could impact dozens of lives directly and indirectly, and that's really what's helped the community over time. And it's been 37 years. It's been fantastic. I really appreciate you coming in and giving me the time to go through this.
Brian, thank you very much.
Right.
Really appreciate it being here and able to share our story.
Yeah. So that's it. And, if you like what you saw today, please leave us a comment. Something about George Snow would be fantastic. Don't forget that Duff Law Digital does videos on probate, trust administration, litigation in those areas, and estate planning. I'm Brian Duffy, Florida lawyer for Duff Law Digital and the Duffy Law Firm. And thanks to Tim Snow and the George Snow Scholarship Fund. And we'll hope to see you soon.